Brewing Network.
We've got one more session here behind the beer. This is Soren Eriksson, everybody. Welcome in Soren from 8 Wired from down in New Zealand.
Thank you.
Welcome. Let's just talk some of the 101 about 8 Wired. Tell us a little bit about where it is, who you guys are, what you guys do down there.
Yeah, so our company is called 8 Wired Brewing. We're from New Zealand. We started out in the South Island. Basically, at the moment, we don't have our own brewery. We contract brew in a sense, but we do make most of the beer ourselves. So we go into... we have one main brewery that we use. If we go in, we make the beer ourselves. Brew it, filter it, package it at the brewery. We use another brewery as well, just because capacity is not big enough at the first brewery, and we've just started using a third brewery as well. But the good news is that just before we came up here, we finally signed the lease on a spot for ourselves. So in about 6 to 8 months' time, we should have our own brewery down there.
Awesome. Very, very cool. Give us a little bit about your background. How did you first get into beer, and what got you interested in it?
It's the same old story, really. I was a home brewer for a few years. I was studying biochemistry at the same time, and I finished up my degree. I started working a little bit at the university in Auckland, down in New Zealand, but quickly realized that I didn't really want to start a career in biochemistry. So I took a punt, and me and my wife, we decided to start up our own brewery. So just to get some commercial experience, I got an internship at a brewery in New Zealand. We then realized that we didn't have the money or the time or the skill or anything that it takes to start up a brewery, really. So instead of starting up our own brewery, we started contracting out of that brewery that I was working at. I got a job as the assistant brewer at the same time. So I was brewing their beer 2 days a week, and then our own beer 2 days a week.
What is it about the pre-med biochemical guys who go through all of this study, all of this school, and then, I mean, it's working for Matt Brynildson, right? You know, same career path.
Yeah.
Well, I just fascinating what it is that you get to that point and you go, I think I'm going to do this instead.
I don't know. I mean, I suppose we all have a natural curiosity for how microbes work and how just biology and how you mix this thing and these two things and it turns into another thing. But then as a biochemist, you sit in a lab doing that all day. It's much more fun being out there actually making something. Getting a final product that you can use for something.
I'm curious for people who don't know about the New Zealand scene as far as craft beer goes in New Zealand. A lot of exciting things. We've got a lot of brewers from New Zealand here today. In fact, is a pretty good testament of a small place making a big noise with their beer. Tell us where you fit in terms of you're signing a lease on the new place, like you said. So you're just still very up and coming at this point with the challenges that you have sourcing out and whatnot. Tell us about the scene in New England.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we've been in business for 4.5 years now, and I actually already feel like an old dog down there. There's so many new breweries just popping up all the time. A lot of just home brewers just taking the next step and either building a very small brewery in the garage or contracting out the recipes. So yeah, really, I mean, 5 years ago, just before we started, the scene was very, very limited. I do feel like an old dog, even though it's only been 4.5 years.
A lot of things are happening down there.
Yeah.
Tell us about the beers that you brought here today. Start with the session beer, the Farmhouse.
Yeah, the Farmhouse Pale Ale is one of our newer beers. Traditionally, our beers have been quite big and very hoppy, very West Coast inspired, you could say. So yeah, the Farmhouse is one of our attempts to make something that's a bit more sessionable. It's a 5% Farmhouse Pale Ale.
Yeah, notice we're not pouring those, because I think you poured all your beer already today.
We sold out about 2:00, so there's no more left.
Yeah, all their beer's gone for been over an hour since it's been gone. So so we're just imagining how awesome it is, and if you didn't get a chance to get any yet. But that obviously, you said West Coast inspired IPA or hoppy style. What were some of your inspirations? Were there American inspirations, worldwide inspirations when it came to what kind of styles you wanted to produce?
It's all, I definitely say 95% of the inspiration comes from America, easily. Yeah. From breweries on the West Coast, predominantly. Very hop-driven beers. We do make a lot of sour beers now as well, so that sort of fits nicely into the trend of what's happening over here as well. So yeah.
That's where it comes from. We had the New Zealanders on earlier that said we're taking all their hops from you guys, all the New Zealand hops. Especially the hop shortage a few years ago was a big problem. Is it like blues music in that? Now follow me on this analogy. In that all of the English stars took our blues music and gave it back to us in a different way. Have we taken your hops and then give it back to you in a different way?
I've never heard that one before, but that's a good analogy.
It's a musical analogy. That's where I live.
I wouldn't go that far. I mean, most of the breweries in New Zealand do use New Zealand hops, and they're not really. Well, I guess what most breweries started out trying to do was make American-style beers with New Zealand hops. Right. I mean, that's how our flagship IPA came around. It was simply just a West Coast IPA with all New Zealand hops, which then turns into a completely different beer than what I actually set out to make as a homebrewer.
Right.
So. Yeah, I don't know if you took our hops and gave them back to us. You probably showed us how to use hops.
Right,
I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And then we just used our own hops to create a different thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. Very cool. This is Soren Eriksson, everybody from 8 Wired, by the way, hanging out up here.
It's not open yet.
We got to crack this one. This is like the last one here, Matt. They ran out like an hour ago. This is like the last one. Hey, look, everybody, it's Matt. You guys know Matt? Here you go. I mentioned earlier, Matt's on the beer show on the Crush 92.5 Thursday at 5. I'm not above shameless plugs because I'm on the radio. Thursday at 5 on 92.5 and repeating Sunday at 5. In fact, tomorrow at 5 will be Matt as well. We kind of talk about this.
This is...
Which one is this? This is the Saison?
Chardonnay barrel-aged Saison. So it's... it's a Saison that's been in Chardonnay barrels for about 2 years with some Brettanomyces. And whatever else was left in those barrels.
Pass it around a little bit. Yeah, that was going to be. It's a perfect set for my next question because the next one is the Chardonnay barrel-aged Saison. The whole merging of the wine and the beer is just fascinating to me. Yeah. Tell us about how this one has come to be.
Well, it started out as a Saison, New Zealand hop Saison. French Saison yeast, real dry, put it into barrels, Chardonnay barrels from the local wine region down there. Added some Brettanomyces, and then we just left it. It was very. I was planning to put it out within like 6 months, but it ended up being in there for almost 2 years. Yeah. It was really sulfury, really farty for a long time. So it just took a while before it came out and into the bottle.
And I don't know if you mentioned it, but what kind of barrels? Do you use to age it?
This one is Chardonnay barrels, but most of the barrels that we have are Pinot Noir barrels. It's the winemakers like to give up their red wine barrels, but they don't like to give up their white wine barrels. Right. So that's the only lot of white wine barrels that we ever got our hands on.
Even though would there be a little bit more availability on the whites because New Zealand makes so many white wines that it seems like you might be able to get your hands on a few.
Yeah, but most of the white wines in New Zealand are not barrel aged. They're just fermented in stainless. If they do age them, they're not so much after the oak character. They're just after the aging character, and that's why they reuse the white wine barrels for decades, or at least 1 decade. Whereas a Pinot Noir barrel, Pinot Noir is the most common red grape down there. They only use maybe 1 or 2 years, and then they just flick them off, and we pick them up for virtually nothing.
Soren Eriksson, everybody. We got the microphone open here. If anybody wants to come up and ask a question, please feel free to do so. We appreciate the time and visiting. What do you see as sort of the future for 8 Wired? Obviously, you said just signed the lease on the place, so you guys are really is it almost kind of starting over again now with your own space, bringing in your own gear and everything?
Yeah, not really. It's more sort of an expansion phase, I guess. Apart from the actual physical getting the brewery into there, I think the transition will be quite smooth. Just start brewing on our own system instead of on other people's system.
That's gonna be interesting and exciting at the same time. That you get to sort of have everything all in one place. Are you gonna start just kind of pick up where you're at, or are you going to start adding in new programs right away, or you know, crawl before you walk? That's an expression that we use.
Yeah, I think we're already walking, so it's just a matter of being able to run, I guess, not being restrained by capacity anymore, and just get our own space and just make the mess that we want to make, and
exactly.
Just get on with it. Yeah.
So 3 years from now, where are you going to be?
That's a good question. We'll most definitely still be there in that spot. That should be big enough for at least 3 years. But yeah, from there we'll see what happens.
Awesome. Soren Eriksson, everybody. 8 Wired. Let's give him a big old round of applause. Anybody's got a question? Last call for questions. If not, thank you so much for being up here. Great beer. Great beer, too.
Thanks a lot.
Great beer. If there's anything left in there, you should get it before I finish it. Pepper Daniels from the Crush 92.5, thanks for being out here, hanging out. If you've been out here this afternoon, we appreciate it. Get out and finish what beers are left, and enjoy what music is left and what food's left, and enjoy Paso Robles. Go downtown, have dinner tonight. You're going to love it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure. Nice work.
The Brewing Network.